Everybody's probably getting J.J. McCarthy talk exhausted. But it's prevalent this week because the Minnesota Vikings have yet to name a starting quarterback. The question is, are we getting the true insight on J.J. McCarthy? We'll discuss on the UP.
I don't know who I am. Can I say?
Powered by Riverside FM.
Do we really know what we want in a franchise quarterback? I say that because J.J. McCarthy is the highest drafted quarterback in Minnesota Vikings history, and we have this long lineage of having patchwork quarterbacks, not necessarily that franchise guy. So my question to you, UP Nation, Purple Gang Skull Nation, is do you know what you really want out of a franchise quarterback? What attributes do you want out of a franchise quarterback? I don't want to hear, I want another Pat Mahomes or I want another Joe Burrow. What about those guys do you like? And why do you want that in a Minnesota Vikings quarterback? See, everybody thinks they have a plan, and there is no science to finding a franchise quarterback. Everybody thinks they know. Everybody thinks they know. The New York Giants have tried tremendously to find their franchise quarterback. They just invested money in Justin Fields, and it looks like, again, they made the wrong choice. And it wasn't like Justin Fields was a scrub coming out of Ohio State. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the country, but you got to find a way to get it right. Look across the NFL. Everybody is bouncing around. So when you find that guy, you're desperate to hold on to him. The Minnesota Vikings have had big swings, but with those big swings, they've had a lot of misses. And some of it hasn't really been their fault. Like they took a swing on a lot of different quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins didn't work out. Teddy Bridgewater, knee fell apart. Dante Culpepper blows his knee out completely. So it's not like the Minnesota Vikings have not tried to find that franchise guy. They just had some big swings and they missed. Now, another swing that they're making is J.J. McCarthy, man. And I know that there are like 4 different type of fans. There are people that are all in on J.J. no matter what. There are people that are all out on J.J. no matter what. They didn't like the pick. There are people that are going to give J.J. this small sample size. And because they are anxious to have things right away, they will give up on J.J. McCarthy quickly. And then you have the people in the category that I think I fall in. I'm just going to let this thing play out for a while before I make a decision. So you've got 4 different types of fans. But my question is, do we know what we want? Do we know what we are looking at right now? Are we getting the full truth coming out of Eagan, Minnesota and Minnesota Vikings headquarters? Like that is the $1 million question of the day. I think I know what I want in a future franchise quarterback, and this is why I'm kind of all in on J.J. McCarthy, because in my humble opinion, when I look around the guys in the league that make it and succeed, I feel like J.J. McCarthy has all of those attributes. And it's not all about physical, like he has those too, but you got to have a strong mental makeup. You got to be tough. You've got to be intelligent. You got to be able to galvanize people. And so when I look at J.J. McCarthy, for me, for my money, for my buck, I feel like he's got all the attributes that you could ask for in a future franchise quarterback. I talk about his past a lot, man, but God, it's really important that we kind of take a deep dive. And we're going to put everything out on the table, that we kind of take a deep dive on J.J. McCarthy, man. His time at IMG Academy, you can't overlook that. He leaves home, goes to IMG Academy, and plays football there, and puts together an undefeated record in the 2 years that he is there, did not lose a game. And we're not talking about IMG Academy playing scrubs. Like IMG Academy, if you ever look at their football schedule, they're going around and they're playing some of the best high school teams in the country. They're tested every week. And J.J. McCarthy leaves that thing undefeated. Here is a kid that wanted to go to Ohio State, the Ohio State University. Now, keep in mind, J.J. McCarthy had some options, but he wanted to go to Ohio State. Ohio State said no, or they didn't say no, but they didn't offer him. So basically, that is like saying no. And I would love to ask Orion Day, what didn't you see in J.J. McCarthy where you were all over this kid and you gave his scholarship to Kyle McCord, who you ended up suggesting that he leave Ohio State? He goes to Syracuse, has a pretty good year at Syracuse, And now I believe he's on a practice squad somewhere in the NFL. I would love to ask Ryan Day, what didn't you see in J.J. McCarthy? See, those questions are important because these are football people. I think the people that are pro J.J. McCarthy, they're always trying to hide these conversations. Like, it's not like if you're pro J.J., you're supposed to have all conversations that promote J.J. and promote all the things that he does well and highlight his strengths and don't talk about his weaknesses and don't talk about what he can't do. This is what pro J.J. McCarthy people do. And I'm pro J.J. McCarthy, but I want to take a look at everything, man. I want the pros and the cons. So obviously Ryan Day, who is arguably one of the best college coaches in football, did not see something in J.J. McCarthy that he saw in Kyle McCord. That's interesting to me. That's very interesting to me. I would love to know what, but then J.J., the competitor that he is, say, okay, Ohio State didn't extend me an offer. I'm going to go to that team up north. I'm going to go to Michigan. And keep in mind that Ohio State had been drubbing Michigan for years under Urban Meyer, and even Ryan Day came in. The narrative around Ryan Day is that he can't beat Michigan. Well, he beat Michigan once. And then when J.J. McCarthy came in, all of the dominance that Ohio State had over Michigan, all of it stopped. And there have been stories about the recruiting process at Michigan. J.J. McCarthy was a part of that. And he used to tell guys that would come to campus, man, hey, if you're not coming here to play football, don't play. We're not here to chase girls. We're not here to party. We're not here to drink. We're here to win football games. And a lot of that stuff, when you have these legends on campus, some of these stories, there's probably some truth to it, but not 100% truth to it. Like, I don't know if every recruit that came to campus that interacted with J.J. McCarthy had that happen a lot, but I'm assuming that where there's smoke, there's fire. The truth is somewhere around there in terms of how he interacted with recruits that came to campus, winning mentality. And then all the losing to Ohio State stopped. That's important to me because to me, something changed in that locker room, and he was the leader and the face of that at Michigan. Keep in mind, stay with me, UP Nation, Purple Gang, Skull Nation, when we're talking about J.J. McCarthy. Some people have really, really short memories. When you think about J.J. McCarthy, not only were they losing to Ohio State, man, but they were trying to run Jim Harbaugh out of town. That's how come he interviewed with the Minnesota Vikings. There was nothing on the radar that said that the Michigan Wolverines were going to win a national championship. But JJ enters the picture and all of that changes. Now, keep in mind, there was a scandal at Michigan. You had assistant coaches dressing up in opponents' colors, camping out on their sidelines to steal signs. There was the whole sign-stealing scandal. Harbaugh gets suspended for 3 games. Their assistant coach had to take over. But who was the coach on the field? Who was the leader on the field? J.J. McCarthy. Through all of the turmoil, J.J. McCarthy. And not only did they have that turmoil and that weight on his back, but he had the weight and the responsibility on his back just being the leader of the team. And it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to have a winning record that season. Michigan had done that before. It wasn't enough to beat Ohio State. Michigan had done that before. But instead of resting on his laurels as a quarterback, he led Michigan to a national championship. And I want people out there who are casual fans and even fans that follow college football a lot, go back and see how long it's been since Michigan was even on the radar to win a national championship. He got them to the playoffs the year before. They lose. He comes back, runs the gauntlet, and wins a national championship at rookie as a senior. And they win a national championship. And then he comes in as a rookie to the Minnesota Vikings. And so you have to ask yourself, man, what attributes am I looking for? Do we know what we're looking for in the franchise quarterback? I just kind of laid out 2 scenarios for you at IMG Academy and the Michigan Wolverines. So I asked the doubters or the critics of J.J. McCarthy, what are you not liking? Because we've had the guys that have all the physical measurables. Hell, Sam Darnold had all the physical measurables last year. Big, strapping, 6'4", strong arm guy. You see what he's doing in Seattle? But it wasn't enough. There was something missing with Sam Darnold. Outside of all the physical attributes, there was something missing for Sam Darnold. And I think the Seattle Seahawks, and I'm not wishing ill will on anybody, but I think the Seattle Seahawks eventually, they're going to find that out. But again, back to J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy had a roller coaster ride. If you remember the draft speculation, I mean, early on they were talking about him being a late second round pick, and then he started to climb up the ladder, and then we talked about early second round, and then it was late first round, and then people were talking about he was going to be up in the teens around pick 15. Like, he just started to gain a lot of steam, and I can see that because when you look at his measurables in terms of his frame, like, there are a lot of quarterbacks that have better measurables when you just talk about the physical body. But he started going to these combines, and he started interacting with GMs, and you start interacting with coaches. And the one thing that you can't dispute about J.J. McCarthy is that when you get him in those environments, man, he becomes very, very attractive to GMs and coaches. He's great in a room full of people. He's polished. He's professional. He's smart. And just being around J.J. McCarthy and seeing him with the Minnesota Vikings, I can see why his stock during that time frame would rise. Then it went from like 15. In some cases, people were talking about that he was the best quarterback in the draft. Now, I never saw that, but it shows, I mentioned that, it shows because it shows you how fast people's stock could draft. Here's what I wonder, and we will never get this, but these are the secrets that are behind the walls of Minnesota Vikings headquarters at Egan. And I would love to get KOC in the room, no cameras, no recorders, no nothing, and kind of pick his brain on who he thought the best quarterback in the draft was at that time. What organizations love to do when you hear that, no matter what position it is, man, it could be cornerback, wide receiver, running back. But in this case, it's the quarterback. So what you always get after an organization drafts a guy, what do they say? We got our guy. No matter where they pick, whether it's 16 or 17, we got our guy. And if you're not picking first as a fan, you leave the door open for speculation, and you gotta know, or you gotta wonder, did we get our guy or are we settling for our guy? When you look at the draft that J.J. McCarthy came out in, I think there was a realism that set over the Minnesota Vikings of who they could possibly get and who they couldn't. I believe they felt like Caleb Williams. I don't know where Caleb Williams was on his board, but I think that the Minnesota Vikings probably knew that even if they wanted Caleb Williams, that they probably couldn't get him because he was going to be the number one overall pick. The Chicago Bears didn't keep that a secret at all. They told you who they were going to pick. And then you had Daniels, who went to the Commanders. I don't think the Minnesota Vikings felt like they had a shot at him either. But I would believe that if KOC had that first pick, he probably would have went with the Commanders quarterback. Now, outside of the people that realistically the Minnesota Vikings had no chance to get, I would love to ask KOC who he coveted, because you're talking about a lot of good quarterbacks that are left on the board. You can go Bo Nix, you can go J.J. McCarthy, you can go Drake May, you can go Michael Penix Jr. Out of those guys, I think it's safe to say that the Minnesota Vikings chose J.J. McCarthy over Bo Nix, so you can put Bo Nix on the shelf. So now it boils down to Drake May, Michael Penix Jr., and J.J. McCarthy. Well, it's no secret, and I believe this, that the Minnesota Vikings wanted Drake May. I totally believe that with 100% of everything in my heart, everything that I researched, people that I talked to. I think the Minnesota Vikings wanted and they coveted Drake May more so than Michael Penix Jr. and J.J. McCarthy. I believe they put some offers on the table to the New England Patriots to be able to move up and choose Drake May, but the Patriots were not having it. Either they were set on Drake May where he was priceless and there was nothing that the Minnesota Vikings could give them for Drake May. They covered him that much, or they were asking too much and the Minnesota Vikings said no. So Drake May is off the board. We can't get Drake May, but I honestly believe that's the route that the Minnesota Vikings would have taken. What do you think, UP Nation, Purple Gang, Skull Nation? Put it in the comments. That's just my humble thought. Now you have Michael Penix Jr. and J.J. McCarthy. So you got to start dealing with the real stuff. And this is why I'm trimming away all the fat. Obviously, we know where KOC stands between J.J. and Bo Nix. Who did he choose? He chose J.J. McCarthy. We saw that play out in real time. That is a fact. That is true. But the one thing that we never really got to see is who KOC would have picked between Michael Penix Jr. and JJ McCarthy. It would have been really eye-opening to see that plan play out, UP Nation. But the Atlanta Falcons, who no one saw doing this, jumped over the Minnesota Vikings to choose Michael Penix Jr. when they already had Kirk Cousins in the fold. So now Michael Penix Jr. is off the board and is down to JJ and Bo Nix. And again, we took JJ. The question is, don't you wonder, is it a bad thing to wonder? Does it make you anti-JJ if you wonder if it was Drake May, Michael Penix Jr., JJ McCarthy, who would the Minnesota Vikings have gone with? And if not JJ McCarthy, like, isn't it a natural question to ask why? Like, what attributes do you see in Drake May and Michael Penix Jr. if you'd have chose those two over JJ McCarthy? What did you see, KOC? You're the quarterback whisperer. What did you evaluate? What were some of the strengths of JJ McCarthy, but what were some of his shortcomings compared to the other two? Because once they had to draft JJ McCarthy, you know you're going to get the company line. We got our guy. We got our guy. But the reality of it is, did they really get their guy? Or did they settle for what was left? The lesser of two evils with JJ McCarthy and Bo Nix. Did they honestly really get their guy? See, I think they did, but I just wonder behind the scenes, before the present is the present, what would KOC have done if the circumstances played out a little bit differently, if that makes sense? UP Nation, Skull Nation, Purple Gang, hit that like and subscribe button right away. Don't you just ever wonder? And then how things play out. JJ McCarthy comes in, Sam Darnold comes in, and man, if you remember those training camps, JJ McCarthy had some really, really good days. So did Sam Darnold. But every day it was either JJ play well or Sam Darnold play well, and JJ play well, Sam Darnold play well. Some days they didn't. It was this roller coaster ride. And I think the plan was to have Sam Darnold be the starter. But KOC left that door kind of cracked. And as training camp went on, joint practices went on, preseason games started, you can start to hear rumblings that JJ McCarthy was starting to make a little bit of noise. That it wasn't a foregone conclusion that Sam Darnold would be the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I believe that Sam Darnold, to start the season, would have been starting quarterback. I just don't know if he would have kept that starting job for the rest of the year, looking at that middle of the season where it was the Lions and the Rams and things weren't looking so great. That could have been and would have been probably the time that JJ McCarthy would have came in and taken over the helm. It would have been different. He would have had training camp. He would have had practices under his belt. And he had momentum, and everything was growing and going in the right direction for JJ McCarthy. Remember his preseason game, lit it up while Jets was on the sidelines talking to PA. And then he comes in the next day with a little bit of knee soreness, found out he had a meniscus issue, which probably transitioned over from when he played for the Michigan Wolverines. Who knows? But he really didn't do anything in that preseason game that anybody can point out where he probably did some damage and hurt his knee. He had some knee problems at Michigan, and this probably carried over to the Minnesota Vikings having him. So not only did he come in with a little bit of knee soreness, but he was out for the rest of the season, wasn't going to play, couldn't even practice. They did a lot of virtual things with him, but he couldn't play or practice. That's a big obstacle for JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy had to deal with that emotionally. JJ McCarthy, who is a competitor, probably the first time in his career had to sit, take a back seat, not even physically practice, and watch a veteran do it the way he did it in Sam Darnold. And for all intents and purposes, Sam Darnold, great year, 14-3, just didn't get the job done in terms of going to the Super Bowl. But my question is, what does that do for JJ McCarthy? It creates, in my opinion, a more of a hunger for JJ that he wants to get back. It's why his work ethic was so great during the offseason. He wanted to get back. He had to get back. He wanted to get back. He had to get back. So now you have a hungry competitor on the sideline in JJ McCarthy. And we all know what a motivated JJ McCarthy can do. He's shown you at IMG Academy. He's shown you at Michigan. These are attributes, UP Nation, that translate to no matter what level. Sometimes your arm strength doesn't travel through various levels. Your playmaking skills doesn't travel through various levels. There are levels to this. You hear coaches say this at the same time all the time, that there are levels to this. So sometimes your physical attributes won't translate. You always hear people say the game has to start to slow down to this player that's coming in as a rookie or coming in as a player, because sometimes physical attributes do not translate. There have been plenty of failed quarterbacks that were great in college that were not great in the pros. Physical attributes don't always translate. The physical and the mental traits are a little bit different. The mental traits can transition through every level of sport. The hunger and the motivation that J.J. McCarthy has when he has a chip on his shoulder about something, he has shown that he will always find a way to get through adversity and succeed. You look at IMG Academy, you look at the Michigan Wolverines. Now he's with the Minnesota Vikings coming off an injured year where he didn't get an opportunity to play. He sees all of his peers that came out during that class is playing. What do you think that does for J.J. McCarthy in terms of motivation, UP Nation? What do you think that does for his motivation? What do you think that does for his hunger? Now he comes in and he knows, see, guys like J.J. McCarthy, they have high standards. Like, this isn't about them going out and playing. J.J. McCarthy has high standards. And if his supporters, the pro J.J. McCarthyers, that will make every single excuse for him to kind of prop him up. And this is why I say JJ doesn't need that, because JJ knows that his first two games weren't that good. Outside of that fourth quarter, if you were to ask JJ McCarthy, hey, JJ, how do you think you played, man? You're not going to hear from JJ McCarthy, well, I didn't have Christian Darrisaw. JJ McCarthy is going to say, I got to play better. That was trash. I have a standard. I'm going to get to that standard. That is J.J. McCarthy. So now J.J. McCarthy is out again for the past 3 games, and he gets an opportunity to see another veteran do it the way it's supposed to be done. Carson Wentz, again, not lighting it up, but he's playing admirably. There are worse backup quarterbacks than Carson Wentz in terms of the production they can give you. But the most important thing is J.J. McCarthy is having an opportunity to digest all the things that have been saying about him. And he's probably going to, I don't listen to social media. I don't listen to content creators. I don't watch the news. This is kind of the lines that all of these players give. Yes, they do. If you are going to try to sell me that J.J. McCarthy is not hearing all of the critiques, people calling him a bust, all the negative things that are being said about him, you are fooling yourself. It matters what his inner circle thinks. It matters what the people in Minnesota Vikings headquarters thinks in Eagan. But it also affects him as well, what other people think about him. And they can, and JJ can play the game and say, well, I'm not really listening to those things. I know that he's letting some of those things in because it's very important for him to be liked by the fans, the community of the Minnesota Vikings. So even though you may not have 2 full ears on that stuff, you're listening. And I'm here to tell you that creates a hunger in that young man that you'll never know is there, but it's burning like a fire inside J.J. McCarthy, man. It's just the type of competitor that he is. I expect that the next time we see J.J. McCarthy, there's going to be a lot of growth in terms of him getting rid of the ball and him playing with a little bit more confidence and a little bit more swag. Obviously, there's going to be some pieces that are going to be back in the fold that's going to be able to help him out. Christian Darrisaw, for one. Aaron Jones eventually is going to be back. That offensive line is eventually going to get back healthy. Addison is going to be there at his disposal as wide receiver too. So there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be better. I also think that it's really important. KOC has a hand in this as well. I think it's really important for KOC the next time that J.J. McCarthy hits the field that he's got to look a certain way. KOC has he's attached to the hip with J.J. McCarthy. He has a lot of things invested in J.J. McCarthy, for sure. And so he's going to make sure that the next time, this is why I don't think there is a sense of urgency, if you notice, to get J.J. McCarthy back on the field. You're talking about KOC and his pressers, talking about, he's only had 1 practice since the Chicago Bears game, which is true. And then he starts in on his footwork and his timing and his hips and all that. And when you start throwing that out there, for me, it speaks to Carson Wentz is going to start on Sunday. Because keep in mind, man, when you're dealing with human beings, you have to have something to sell J.J. McCarthy. If J.J. McCarthy's ankle is feeling okay, J.J. McCarthy in his mind is saying, well, I'm QB1. You haven't told me any differently. I'm ready to go. So now that communication with KOC is either going to play him or if KOC feels like he's not ready, he's got to have something for JJ McCarthy to digest and deal with and be okay with. And that is the talk, hey, JJ, we got to get your footwork together. You've only had one practice since the Chicago Bears game. We got to work on your timing. We got to work on your rhythm. Because the one thing that KOC can't argue is how JJ McCarthy ankles feels. JJ McCarthy is the only one that knows how his ankle feels. KOC can't dispute that. If he's moving pretty well in practice and doing all the things that he's supposed to do and they can see it physically, KOC really doesn't have a leg to stand on in terms of him being healthy enough to play. But what the layman really doesn't understand, and when you're teaching a young person that's cutting his teeth at the quarterback position, you can start talking about footwork. You can start talking about rhythm. You can start talking about your hips, ball release, rhythm of the offense, all that stuff, and you can sell that to JJ McCarthy to be out one more week. And until KOC gets comfortable that he's ready. Now, keep in mind, if he's out during the Philadelphia Eagles game and Carson Wentz is starting quarterback, odds are he probably won't play against the Chargers. So you're looking at the Detroit Lions game where JJ McCarthy is possibly going to come back, and that gives KOC another couple of weeks to work on JJ McCarthy. See, the optics of this thing is really, really important, especially with other quarterbacks that are out there playing well, the Daniel Joneses, the Sam Darnolds, the Aaron Rodgers. The next time, it is important, the next time that we see JJ McCarthy, UP Nation, like he's got to look way better than he did in the first two games. Or it sets a tone that KOC and Kwesi and the boys really don't want for the rest of the season. Like it's got to look better. How much better, I don't know, but it's got to look better than it did the first two games. Because there will be no more excuses. Like you're going to have the Darasols and the guys back. So I think JJ McCarthy will be under center at some point during the season, but KOC wants to make sure that the next time he goes out there that he's ready to go. Because I believe in the first two games, KOC saw something in JJ McCarthy that surprised him, that he didn't expect. And I believe that he is, because you have to understand, KOC is with these guys every day in practice. He's watching film with them. He's doing drills with them. He's communicating with them. And so he's supposed to be like, this is his area of expertise. And when you look at a guy like Daniel Jones succeeding, people always say, well, he went through the rehab school of KOC. That's why he's playing so well. Sam Darnold went through the rehab school of KOC. That's why he's playing well. And it's very easy to kind of spin those narratives. But the Pastronaut also went through the Kevin O'Connell School of Rehabilitation. Nick Mullins, Brett Rippon, like all of these guys went through the same school. And this is not a knock, but it's funny how once we need to, we can make the narrative fit. There is a chance that we all could be wrong about JJ McCarthy. Like, I don't think that I am. Those of you that are pro JJ McCarthy's, there is a chance that this thing may not work out. But all of the attributes that I've seen from this young man, I just think that JJ McCarthy is that guy. And I believe that it's just going to take some time, UP Nation. And I think we have to be real with it. Like, I think we're not going to ever get kind of the whole story that's coming out of Egan at Minnesota Vikings headquarters. I don't think we're ever going to get the true story about what's going on there and really what they think. I do think, though, that there is a level of hesitation within the Minnesota Vikings organization about JJ McCarthy and putting him back out there. And I don't think it's all physical. And I don't think it's all footwork, rhythm. I think in those first two games, the guy that we labeled the quarterback whisperer in Kevin O'Connell, I think there were some things other than the injuries, other than the ankle, other than the breakdown of the offensive line. I think that there were some things that he saw in his quarterback that he did not expect to see. And when the injury came, it was a natural transition to go to Carson Wentz. And it probably was the best thing for JJ McCarthy because now, rather than benching JJ McCarthy, KOC essentially gets a benching whether he wants it or not in terms of the high ankle sprain. But he also gets a chance to show and work with JJ McCarthy on the sideline. And I think that is so beneficial for the both of those two. For the next time when JJ McCarthy hits that field, he can say, oh, this is what KOC wanted. And I think we're going to see a better version of JJ McCarthy in that capacity. The reason why I just wanted to make this, man, is that we don't know who's going to play on Sunday. There are people that want it to be JJ. There are people that want it to be Carson Wentz. I want it to be JJ. I think that ankle is probably healed. I don't know. I'm not looking at the training reports, not talking with the doctors. the Minnesota Vikings. But, man, I've dealt with high ankle sprains before, and I think that there is a possibility that he could be about 90%, and maybe KOC wants him to be 100%. But I do think, listening to what's coming out of headquarters in Egan, I think the Minnesota Vikings are going to go with Carson Wentz for another week. And if they go with Carson Wentz for another week, odds are he's probably going to play Thursday night too. So my only fear with that is that I want it to be J.J. McCarthy because I think we need to find out, and you're given a pretty good quarterback in Carson Wentz another 2 weeks to get you to think about some other things if he plays well. And I want him to play well too, but I know that I look at what the finish is going to be. If hypothetically Carson Wentz were to take this thing over for the rest of the year, I know where it's going to end. And I would rather for it to end the same way with a guy like J.J. McCarthy, so at least we know and understand what we have. If you're feeling me, UP Nation, Skull Nation, Purple Gang, we need to find out what we have in J.J. McCarthy. And I think he needs to get some reps. I think the Minnesota Vikings organization they've babied him somewhat. He's not going to play in preseason games. And this is the guy that just needs to play. He just needs his reps. He just needs to play. Like, that's got to be paramount in the organization. Let's stop protecting him. He needs to get out. He needs to play. But when he takes over, I think you're going to see a whole different version of J.J. McCarthy. I think there's going to be some things that he's probably saw within these last 3 or 4 weeks. And if Carson Wentz gets, 2 more weeks, that he's going to learn that when he steps on the field is really, really going to help him. But I always wonder, man, are we getting like the whole story out of Egan? Did we get the whole story during the draft? Is J.J. McCarthy who KOC really wanted? If not, where was J.J. McCarthy on his draft board in terms of quarterbacks? I would love for him to be able to go through and say, hey, this is what I liked about this guy that was ahead of JJ. This is what I like about this guy that was ahead of JJ, and what he liked about JJ and what he didn't like about JJ. Like, that's going to be buried forever. Like, you're never going to see that. But I would just love to be able to pick KOC's brain with that. I just want to know where the Vikings stand with him right now today. It'd be interesting topic of conversation if you could get the truth out of Minnesota Vikings headquarters in Egan. I don't think they've lost faith in J.J. McCarthy in terms of being able to be the future franchise quarterback of this organization. But is there hesitation in getting him back on the field because of something that they saw in the first 2 games? That is the question. Please hit that like and subscribe button. And as always, UP Nation, we will see you when we see you. Put in the comments who you think's going to start on Sunday. Will it be J.J. McCarthy? Or will it be our guy, Carson Wentz? Talk to you soon, UP Nation. We'll see you when we see you. Skol!